Podcast U is brought to you in part by Wirecast. Lets you stream professional-looking broadcasts from any location with just a camera, computer, and an internet connection. TV production without the TV budget. Wirecast 4.2 available now at www.telestream.net/Wirecast. Gorilla Printing can fill all of your digital printing needs, from trade show banners right down to business cards. Check them out today at gorillaprinting.ca. Hey, welcome to Podcast U. I'm Richard. I'll be your host through the art of podcasting, and that's what this show is all about, the art of the craft of podcasting. We're going to talk about the ins and outs, how to get started tonight, what you should look for, and then we'll dive into maybe a little bit of equipment as we move along. So stick with us and enjoy the show. If you've got any questions, join the chat room. So there you go. As I said, this is the first, or maybe I didn't say that. This is the first episode of Podcast U, the first official live stream. We're having a few issues tonight. Nothing to be concerned about, though. We're on Justin TV tonight, so if you are looking to get some podcasting info, just let me know right here in our chat room at Podcast U. It's naked8prod.com. And just hit the watch live button and hit the Justin feed, because that's the only one that seems to be working tonight. So we've got a question in the chat room already. It says, what's a podcast? Well, a podcast is a program that is either pre-recorded or streamed live and then sent out over an RSS feed to other areas on the internet, much like iTunes. So if you have an account at iTunes and you want to listen to podcasts, that is sent there through an RSS feed. And I won't get into what an RSS feed is this week, but I do want to talk about how do you get started in podcasting? A lot of people have asked me this question, like, what do I do to get my podcast going? What should I be thinking about? How do I get things rolling? What equipment do I need? And all that other nasty stuff that goes along with the world of podcasting. Well, the simple answer is think about what you want to do first and foremost. Have a passion for what you want to talk about, secondly, and then make a plan. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight, is how to make that plan and get things going. I wrote an article not too long ago for the IAIB, and I want to bring these guys to light. This is the International Association of Internet Broadcasters, and they can be found at ibroadcast.com, if I'm not mistaken. Am I right about that? Somebody's in my chat room is going to correct me on this right away. It is ibroadcast.com, or you can look up IAIB on the internet. And you can certainly join that group over there. It's a fine group of people, internet broadcasters from all over the world. Go to that website and you can join the forum. And it doesn't cost you anything, so I want to make that perfectly clear that go over there. You'll get lots of tips and tricks. There's also several different areas on the internet where you can find information about podcasting. There's a couple of really great podcasts out there. I don't want to make this a big commercial for other people's podcasts, but there are some great ones. If you are so inclined to look on iTunes or just look through the web, you can certainly find a whole array of different podcasts about podcasting. But let's get to the topic of the day. And I am seeing that it's, okay, I'm corrected. It is iBroadcast Network, iBroadcastNetwork.org. Or again, just Google search IAIB. And that'll get you there as well. Now, let's get into the art of podcasting. What do I mean by the art of podcasting? Well, I mean all those little things that you have to do, microphone technique, how to, make sure that your mic isn't way up here and talking really, really deep, or way too far away, so you almost have to shout. So get it at a nice angle, and then you'll get a fairly decent proximity of where your voice is, and you won't be shouting into the microphone. So we're going to talk a little bit about that kind of stuff. We're going to run through some setups later on, what equipment you might want to look at to get started. But let's start with the idea. So you've got an idea to do a podcast, and you're thinking, okay, now how do I go about executing that idea? First and foremost, what I'm going to do is give you some homework. I want you to write down your idea, whatever it is, whether you're into knitting, whether you're into making little figurines, washing cars. If you're a mechanic and you're a car enthusiast, write these ideas down. Find a passion that you really like to talk about. And then pursue that as a podcast. If you're naturally a shy person, remember, there's a lot of people out on the internet that are shy people. There's a lot of great broadcasters out there. There's a lot of great podcasters out there. And you don't necessarily have to have a background in broadcasting to be a podcaster. I know there's a lot of people out there that don't. And they're very successful at the hobby of podcasting and the business of podcasting. A good friend of mine, Andrew Zarian, who owns the GFQ network, is a great example of this. He started out as a hobby in his home, and from that, he grew a small network, which now, if I'm not mistaken, runs 30-plus shows or 13 shows, something along that line, at the GFQ network, or the Guys from Queens network. You can look that up on Google and check out some of the great programming over there and get an idea of what he does for podcasting. There's also the Twit Network. Everybody's heard of Leo Laporte. And everything started with an idea. I myself started this show with an idea. The idea was to bring you some of the stuff that you may not hear on other people's podcasts if you listen to other podcasts about podcasting. There's some great books out there about podcasting. I encourage you to go look them up. I'm going to give some examples a little bit later on in the show. I'm just looking over here to the chat room, see if anybody's got any questions. Somebody says a podcast sounds fun. Well, it is. It's a lot of fun, actually, because you get to put your message out to the world, regardless of what you have to say, whether you're political or not, whether you're religious or not, whether you want to talk about toy cars. Here's a great example. Somebody wanted to do a Hot Wheels podcast. There you go. There's lots of people that are into Hot Wheels. As long as you have the passion, then you can do it. And you don't need a lot of equipment to do it. And we're going to go over that in the next episode. Once a month, you also will find on this show that we are going to do a Podcast U roundtable with some of the experts in the industry. We're going to talk about, again, getting started and some of the equipment that you might want to use as we go forward. Advertising, how to monetize your podcast, the art of doing that as well. Here we go. What are the most popular topics for a podcast? Well, that's a great question. What are some of the most popular topics? Well, technology is a popular topic, and there's a lot of technology podcasts. Movies are another one. Podcasts about podcasting are another great example of that, and I've just thrown my hat into that ring. I think that, if there's anything I would stay away from, I think right now, because of the market being as saturated as it is, I would stay away from Windows and Mac type of technologies. I would do more of the fringe if I were somebody looking at doing a tech podcast. Maybe a podcast about new games or gaming systems, past, present, and what might be coming out in the future. So you can talk about that. You may want to do exercise or fitness podcast. There are several of those out there, and they are gaining ground. Another great one would be a Lego podcast. If I know that there's one person out there right now doing a Lego podcast, and it has seen terrific numbers. They never thought that it would go that far, but there's a lot of people into the hobby of Lego. If that's something you're passionate about, by all means, start a podcast on that. But let's get into how do I design my podcast. Sit down, and much like writing a list of things that you want in your life or goals that you want to achieve, that's how you want to attack starting your podcast. And what I mean by that is set out what you want the show to be about. Give it an outline. This will be the Bible that you go by as you progress through your future in podcasting or the hobby of podcasting. So write down the things like, why do I want to do this podcast? Do people think that you are an expert in that subject matter? If they do, great. Then you are well on your way. Do your research. If you're going to talk about a topic, get out there and do the research on what that topic could be. Maybe it's a new carburetor. Maybe it's a brand new book that's come out. You've got a book club that you want to do a podcast on. Make sure that you do the research. So talk about the author, talk about the book, talk about the producers of the book or who distributes the book. Is there other books in the series? So these are all kinds of examples that I think that everybody should be putting down. Somebody says they've been demoted to unidentified. Okay. There we go. So those are kind of some of the things that I would do if I were getting started in doing a podcast for the first time, is I would go out and I would start writing things down that I wanted to talk about. And this is that type of show where I did a lot of research. I listened to a bunch of other podcasts on podcasting. There's a great podcast out there right now called The School of Podcasting by Dave Jackson. If you don't know it, I suggest you go and have a listen to it. Dave Jackson, very smart guy, knows what he's talking about, been doing this a long time. Andrew Zarian, go check out GFQ Network. I think he's well worth the look. So let's see, and I am here because of your Facebook posts. So somebody's here because I posted on Facebook. That's another great thing. Once you get your podcast out there to the masses, you've done all your research, you're ready to record your first show. You record it to your laptop or to your desktop using a microphone or a headset or anything along that line, and you want to get it out there to the masses. Well, again, you start that RSS feed, and we're going to go into that in future episodes and how to set up your website and all that other kind of stuff. But that's not the topic of today's show. And then we will go ahead and, get it out there. Use social media. Social media is a great way to get your podcast known to people. Facebook, great example. Rex said he saw the posting, came right over. And that's great. Get involved in other Facebook groups. There are excellent groups out there about podcasting. Some are great, some aren't so great. Some are great participants, some aren't so great participants. So it really, you have to kind of check around and see what's out there. Now, the one question I get asked all the time is, well, how can a podcast happen? What equipment do I need? I really didn't want to go into too much equipment tonight, but I will show you this. As I wreck the desk, this is a simple headset that you can buy at any store. This is a Microsoft headset that comes with a little mic, and it plugs in via USB. And you can record that right into your laptop without too much trouble. So for about $40, you can get started with a headset and a microphone. The software is free. The software is called Audacity. And by using that software, it's very easy to use. You can download Audacity for free. You can record your first show. And what I'm going to suggest to people is that they record multiple pieces. Just record yourself talking. Get used to talking into a microphone. Get used to talking to your computer. Doesn't have to be anybody around, but I want to stress that you get used to that. Listen to yourself back, because we don't always hear ourselves when we talk. When we talk, we hear ourselves internally. We don't hear ourselves externally. And one of the questions here is the term podcast becoming overused to the point of it not getting the same attention as, say, internet broadcasting? Well, podcasting's been around for a long time, and podcasting was a term that was coined long before the iPod ever came out. It was a way of getting media out onto the internet. I don't remember exactly who the inventor of the word was, but it did not have anything to do with the iPod. Do I think the term is overused? I think the term is not accurate for what happens today. I think, and this is just my opinion, I think now we are all becoming internet broadcasters. We're creating media for consumption on the internet. We're not using television, we're not using radio, we're not using newspapers. But the internet has given each and every person a voice if they choose to have it on the internet. And that was one of the great things about YouTube, was YouTube gave everybody a voice for 15 minutes. You got your 15 minutes of fame, and you could say whatever you wanted. And people would tune in and listen to what you had to say based on your subject matter. Now, granted, there's a lot of bad information out there. People don't do the research, and that's primarily why we started this show. People are asking why they can't see the video again. There we go. In any case, I'm you're going to find I'm going to get very distracted because I'm looking at the chat room. So I want to keep on top of any questions that may come in. So getting back to that, is podcasting being overused? The term podcasting being overused? I think so. I think we are becoming, what Leo Laporte said, we're becoming micro broadcasters. And if you want to think of it in terms of the days of ham radio, which is still very much alive, the internet has become the ham radio of the future, or of present time. So everybody can get on here. There are great venues to get on and talk with your friends via a cam like this and a microphone. You can even use the microphone and the camera in your laptop or your iPad. There's a number of ways that you can do it. With that being said, Google Plus, Google Hangouts are a great example of that. Now you can get together with up to 10 friends and chat and talk about whatever interests you. If you're into knitting, for instance, you can do that. And now what Google Plus has done for the community of podcasting is they've made it available on air. And what I mean by that is there's a little button that you can click that says go on air, and it will stream that directly to YouTube, because Google owns YouTube, of course. Now, when you do that, not only do people get to see it live, but they also get to interact with you by asking you questions on the YouTube chat. They can ask you questions on the Google Plus chat, as long as they are watching the live stream. Now, the nice thing about that is, if you don't have a lot of money and you're just getting started and you have your simple webcam and you got your money, or you got your microphone, pardon me, you can do this almost for free. And I say almost because there is some investment in equipment. If you needed to get a better set of microphone and headphones, then this would be the way to go. And you can't get that for free. You have to buy that. The microphone I'm using now sells for $40 on Amazon. And again, that's an investment. So you can't really do podcasting for free, but you can do it for a very, very small investment. YouTube gives you the ability to record the show that you're doing, as well as being able to archive it so that you can download it later for yourself to utilize on other venues, such as Ustream, if you want to put it there. There's places like Blip TV, and I'm missing a few. Somebody want to remind me of some of the ones that are out there? There's Blip TV, there's Vimeo, there's all kinds of them, actually. So what I would say to you is find out what those resources are, and we're going to go into those in depth on another show. This show is probably not going to last an hour unless I get some more questions. Keith BC, welcome to you, sir. If anybody's got any questions, I'm going to look over here real quick. Somebody asked me a question real quick about podcasting and the art of podcasting, if anybody's got one. This is where the show becomes very interactive, so stick with me. Nobody's got a real quick question? Oh, a better question is the term podcasting outdated? In my opinion, it is. I believe that podcasting is very outdated. I think, again, like I said earlier, we are micro broadcasters. Leo Laporte, the man who pretty much the podfather of modern day podcasting, coined the term micro broadcasting, which people still haven't really caught on to, or internet broadcasting. What I'm doing now is a live broadcast over the internet. So technically it's not a podcast, but when I take it back into review later, add in some nice titling and some credits and that kind of stuff, then it will be turned into a podcast, which can be consumed later by you by either going to the website or going up to iTunes. Do you need any special internet service to do a podcast? Now, that's a great question. To do a podcast, you don't need a really high-end internet service. I would suggest, though, that you look at your local service provider. You can't stream live if you've got a very low bandwidth. I know for myself, I have 2 megabits up and 25 megabits down, so I can only stream to a few different CDNs at the same time, and it's very low quality. If you're watching this on Justin right now, you'll know what I mean. It's not the greatest quality, but I can also record. I'm also recording this at 720p, so it's a very high quality record. And to answer that question, I think you need a moderate internet connection, and your local internet service provider will have many different packages available. I would say to get something that is 2 megabits or better with an upload if you're going to do live streaming. If you're just going to record it and then you're going to upload it to your service provider later, I don't think it's necessary to have anything more than one. What kind of audience size is expected for most podcasters? What should we consider a good audience number? Well, Keith, that's a good question. I know when I started podcasting early in the part of the year of 2012, we started out with about 500 to 600 viewers. Now, part of what we did was we went out locally and really kind of pressed the flesh, as it were, and told people about our podcast. We got flyers into the local comic book stores. We used venues where we knew people would consume our content. And with that being said, that helped us grow to where we are now, where we get over 37,000 views per month to our website. So they're not necessarily watching live, and I wouldn't count your live numbers as a measuring stick for what your show is going to be. I would count the downloads. That's really going to be the most accurate measuring stick that you're going to have when it comes to your audience. Now, your audience is not going to come right away. People have to know about your show. How do you get people to know about your show? Well, you use social media. You use any of the other venues that are available, forums about the interest, forums about podcasting, Facebook, Twitter. There's a number of different venues out there that you can use. Google Plus, if you're a Google Plus member. I just want to go back here. Do you need a mixer with XLR mic? No, actually you don't. You can start broadcasting, as I said, with something as simple as this, which is a headset with a boom mic. This is a gamer's headset. It doesn't have the best quality of sound, but it does give you sound that you can record. What I typically use, the microphone I'm using, is an Audio-Technica AT2005 USB. The beauty of this microphone, it sells for $40 on Amazon, is it's both XLR and USB. Now, being that it's both XLR and USB, you can use either or you can use both of them. This also has a headphone jack in it. So if you're going to connect it to your laptop, let's say, and you don't have the money for a mixer, and this is something I'm going to discourage people doing, is going out and spending a whole bunch of money on equipment that they may not need. If you're just a single guy and all you're going to do is talk about a topic that interests you, you're not going to have a co-host and that kind of thing, I would get a microphone like this, plug it into your computer via USB. It has a headphone jack on it, so you can plug in a pair of earbuds. There's a volume switch on the bottom. You can adjust the volume for your earbuds, and then you can monitor what's being recorded at that time. There's another question. Do you need any special internet service to do? Okay, we've answered that one. Or special software. Well, special software is not necessary. Well, that actually is not a true statement. You do need something to record your voice or record what you're putting out into a podcast. And as I said earlier, I'm going to recommend for people just getting started a program called Audacity. Audacity is free. It's open source. All you have to do is just type in Audacity into your search engine, and you'll find that there's many links to downloading Audacity for free. Audacity has been around for a long time. A lot of beginning podcasters use it. I probably will go into how to use Audacity in a future episode, but not today. Is it necessary to have video for a podcast, or can it just be audio? It is not necessary to have video. I'm a gorgeous person. No, I'm not. But I think that the bottom line of when it comes to audio versus video, a lot of people are jumping on the video bandwagon really quickly. If your podcast doesn't have the media where you have to show something, and you can just talk about it. Photography is a great example of that because you can talk about technology and photography till the cows come home, and you don't need video to show that. You can put it in your show notes. You can put links to what you talked about in your show notes so people can go and see that later on. So no, I don't think it's necessary to have video. It's nice to have video because then you can emote that feeling of what you're talking about into video. Some people are intimidated by video. They don't want to be, caught on camera. So what I recommend is if you're first getting started, don't worry about the video end of it. Just grab yourself, a microphone and sit down and start talking into it. Keith says, I rarely listen to live video and rarely listen to shows live. And that's really kind of what got podcasting started, was people started looking for the content that was recorded. Live makes it very much like your news television. It also makes it very much like a radio show with a camera on you. I want to see if... somebody's mentioning that my lighting is good. He says it's just fine. Thank you very much, Keith. Now, lighting, there's another interesting thing. What we did here, we don't have lots of fancy lights, and you're going to see podcasts out there that talk about buying soft boxes and fancy schmancy lights to put in your little home studio. You may not have a room as big as I've got. I know it looks pretty small from where I'm sitting now, but the room I'm in is about 10.5 feet by 16.5 feet. And the lighting that I use in here is just simple shop lighting. You can go to Walmart or any of your local stores, Lowe's, Home Depot, any place like that, and buy fluorescent fixtures that are around $10 a piece and hang them from the ceiling. They just plug into a plug. Put in some daylight balanced bulbs. That's one recommendation I'm going to make to you, is put in daylight balanced bulbs so all of your lighting is exactly the same. And that's how you're going to get a nice spread of light. And we've got 4 fixtures here in sort of a rectangular configuration. So I get light from this side, I get light from this side, I get light from the back, and I get light from the front. So lighting is very important. If I turned off the lights, I'd be in the dark and then nobody could see me. But that might be a good thing. Now, I think that pretty much ends the questions. Anybody got anything else they want to ask real quick? TechZone 707 says something about over 9,000. I'm not sure what he's talking about there. Oh, maybe that refers back to audience. Audience is subjective because where do you really get those numbers? And we talked about this on a roundtable that I did with the IAIB today. Your audience is only as good as those people who continue to consume your media. So if you're not doing a great show, and this is the first show for podcast use, so it's, in my opinion, it's not great, but it's going to get better. With that being said, do I think that this is going to gain an audience slowly but surely? Sure it is. We're going to talk more about the fundamentals of podcasting in a future episode. I'm going to break it down, and I may actually have some PDFs for you to use as well when you're designing your podcast for the first time. I'm working on those as we speak. What else we got going on? Should you make more than one show? Should you continually podcast? Well, I would say to gain an audience, I would actually podcast. I would set my frequency to every couple of weeks to start off with till I get used to it. I would also, first and foremost, if you're not going to do a live show like I do here, I would suggest that you pre-record your shows. Then you can go back and edit them, make them sound a lot better, clean up the audio. If maybe the kids are yelling in the background and you have to do another take, go back and just edit all those pieces together. Don't take out all the breaths because the breaths make you sound human. What else could I tell you about that? Really, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I would say get to 4 or 5 shows in the can first. Have them recorded, then put them on your website one at a time as you start to record more shows. So as you're putting them up on your web host or web server, then you're recording another show. So you always have a group of 5 shows. Try not to announce dates too much. If you do, that makes your show dated. What else could I say about that? Anybody with any questions about that in the chat room? Just waiting to see if we've got any. I wonder if I missed anything. I caught the mixer question. Do you have to list on iTunes to matter? I'm going to say no, with a caveat to that. When Naked Ape Productions got started and we started doing the show Between the Pages, which is a comic book and geek culture podcast, we didn't put our stream up on iTunes. I just recently submitted our RSS to iTunes in a hope to get more listeners. However, there was a problem with that. They've got us listed as audio by audio. They don't have it listed as Between the Pages by Naked Ape Productions. So, do you need to go on iTunes? I think the question is no when you're starting off. That's going to help you to get your craft down without putting it onto iTunes, because once you start getting into iTunes, and this is just my opinion, other people may have different opinions on this, but once you start getting into iTunes, you start getting into a very popular aggregator of shows. So if you don't have the right metadata, and there's a term that we're going to throw around a little bit later on, if you don't have the right tags to go along with it, then people are going to have a hard time finding it. You really want that show to stand out, so you want to have all the information within your show, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a future episode, how to get all that information, put it into your podcast, so when you do decide to send that RSS feed up to iTunes for the first time, you're going to have a half a dozen shows in the bag. You're going to have, your craft down a little bit more than when you did your first podcast. What do I think of show length? I listen to some podcasts that are 1 hour or more. Sometimes I appreciate a shorter episode. That's actually a really good question. Podcasts can be any length. If you're just going to ramble on and ramble on and ramble on about the same thing from beginning to end, and you stretch that out to an hour, then it can be very redundant very quickly. If you're going to continually push something that nobody really cares about for an hour, that can be really redundant. Some of the great shows out there that I think are less than an hour. This show, for instance, may not run an hour today, depending on how many questions we have. But that being said, I think it really depends on what the content is. A show about knitting, can you do an hour podcast on that? Yeah. Will that appeal to a large audience? Probably not. That's going to be a real niche audience. Are you going after a large audience? I wouldn't say go after a large audience to begin with. I would back off and just see how your numbers grow. Use social media to get your numbers up there. As your topics become more involved, your episodes will go longer. My show Between the Pages, for instance, there I go plugging myself again. We've done shows that have been 45 minutes. We've done shows that have been 2.5 hours. So it all really depends on what you're putting into that show at the time. But as a general rule of thumb, I think anything between a half hour to an hour is probably a good length. Going over that hour mark, I think it just becomes a little long and people lose interest. If you're not grabbing their attention in the first 10 minutes, you're going to lose that audience. And, appreciating a shorter episode, you want a lot of information in a short period of time. Are you going to retain that information? Maybe, maybe not. Are there any other questions in the chat room? If not, we're gonna get to wrapping it up pretty soon. We're gonna wrap it up kind of early tonight, seeing as this is the first show. You'll be able to find on my website in the next couple of days, you'll be able to download this episode, as well as you'll find a roundtable that was never aired on iTunes or Google Plus. We had some technical difficulties, so we recorded the audio on that show, and that had some great podcasters on it. And if you want to listen to that, it will be on the website within the next couple of days. So if there's no more questions real quick, I'm looking at the chat room. I think I've pretty much covered everything. Yes, no, maybe. I want to thank everybody for joining me here tonight. I appreciate you coming out and helping me launch the first episode of Podcast U. And I'm going to bring the show to you weekly. Next week, we're going to dive into a little bit more about getting things set up. So we're going to talk about the equipment that I have, and it's not necessarily the equipment that you're going to need. We're going to talk a little bit about microphone technique next week. Not getting up on it like this. We're also going to talk about how to use Audacity a little bit. Thank you very much, everybody. And with that being said, I want to thank those people who joined me in the chat room. Brian, Andrew, Greg, Keith, and who is that last guy? TechZone707. I want to thank you guys all for joining me tonight. And for anybody that was watching on the Justin channel, thank you. And we're going to see you next week at Podcast U.